Okay, so good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you again, and to start these sessions on the what we call the CP, which is a master thesis. In fact, with 4 sessions. First one being today, the second one will be very soon, and the third one in November, and the fourth one in December. What are we going to do in these sessions? First, I want to make a presentation during the 2 first sessions of what we are waiting for, what is a thesis, what are the steps of the preparation of the thesis, what we are waiting also for the written part and for the oral part, the oral presentations. And I want you to have a few weeks after these 2 sessions to prepare your topic and the first paper on the topic. You will send me the topic, early in November, and I will come back with you on November the 16th, which is session 3, in order to try to give you more advices and try to improve topics with you. Please, it's noisy. It's really noisy. Session 4. Session 4 will be on December 21st. It is scheduled later, 1 month later, because that time, please be silent, please. So I said on session 4 on December, which is December 21st, we will spend 3 hours on the preparation of the oral defense. So 2 sessions today and next week, September 21 and 21st and 28, for the presentations, give you some basic advice, the schedule, the organization, a few words on the topics, a choice of topics, and so on. Third session in November on your first proposal, to try to improve them, and the fourth one in December on the oral presentation, the preparation of the oral presentation. This is how it is organized. Anyway, this is a process which starts now, September 2021, and it's supposed to come to an end by the end of June or beginning of July 2022. So we have several months, about 9 months, to go through the process of preparation, writing, and defense of a master thesis. So that's really the topic we have to deal with. This is the first point. Second point, is about what we are waiting for. It's one of the most important pieces of the MEBF program. All, I would say, good and accredited master program in the world today ask for a master thesis. And when they are for professionals, as you are, you have experience, have a degree, but you have a good experience, it means that it should be on the border on an academic paper and a professional paper, which is one of the main difficulties. Okay, it means on your topic, you should be able, to present the main trends in the research, not only in Vietnam, but worldwide. But at the same time, we need in your thesis, applications, practical elements, case studies, interviews, And at the end, not only results or scientific results, they are useful, but also practical recommendations. So I will come back on this point. This is very, very important if you want to understand what it is. So this is third point, and this is what you see partly here, which was not, which was written for our colleagues from the past intake, but it is still true, still valid. It is a thesis written by a group of one student, if you can say that one student is a group, you know. So this is the requirement of the accreditors of the peer review teams and bodies. Each student should be able, you know, at the end of the program to write a thesis and to defend the thesis. Of course, you are free in the choice of your topic, but I will have to validate the topic and you have to discuss our choice of a topic. I will make a presentation today on risk and potential good topics, you know, which is always was difficult, but I will try to do that. After that, on that first slide, you see what is a requirement in terms of length. It's not really a requirement. It's generally the first question which is asked by the students: how many pages, you know, you want, professor? You know, I don't have any clear answer, but let's say generally good phases are between 50, 60, 70 pages. They are not 20 pages, they are not 300 pages. That's a kind of range, 50, 60, 70, which is quite acceptable. Anyway, it depends very much on the topic, because if you have a topic on, for example, on, I would say on options, generally, you know, these topics are, they present a short phases in terms of number of pages. When you have multiple of cases and interviews, it takes more pages, you know, to make the presentations, and even generally to have summaries of the interviews in the appendixes. So there is no real rule, but this is some kind of idea. Generally, also students ask very quickly, what is the end of the process? The end of the process, and then we will go to details in that on the point later, but it is a defense. The defense, you know, is an oral defense. It means you have to write a thesis. It's a written document. The jury member read the document, and a few weeks after, generally it's about 2-3 weeks after, you have a 1 hour defense session, 1 hour, at least with 2 jury members. Sometimes it's 3, but generally it's 2 jury members. You make a presentation. It's kind of classical PowerPoint presentation, even if it's a specific structure, and I will explain you later what is the structure we are waiting for. You jury members raise questions, and you try to find the good answer, or at least the answers which are needed as that kind of on the topic you present. And then after that, there is a kind of evaluation step, which is the third one, with 2 sub-parts. The first one being an evaluation of jury members without the candidate, the student, and the second one being the last point, which is a debriefing. It means you come back in the classroom and you get your grade, oral and written grade, and you get also some advices to improve your thesis. So here below, you will find a timetable. So I will later update this timetable. It was a timetable given to your colleagues last time. Sorry for that. But anyway, the steps are still there. You find the different steps, which has to be you have to go through during the 9 months to come. So on group formation, it's okay. It's very simple. So I will come back on that. So anyway, after that, you will find some advices here on the presentation, but I will come back on these elements, and you get, and this is all very often asked also by the students, the evaluation sheet we have to fill at the time of the defense with the grades we give to the written report and to the oral report. And what is written below is that the written report is for 50% and the oral report is also for 50%. So both are very important for you. Okay. And you understand that we have, in fact, 6 main criteria. On the written report, it's methodology and mastering of the concepts. This is the academic part, basic academic part. Second one is the literature review, and we explain later what is literature review, what we are waiting for. The first one is about data. What about data collection, data mining? How do you manage the process with this data? What is the methodology behind? And what is the added value of this research? And this last point, which is more classical on any kind of paper, it is the quality of a report in terms of how it is written, how it is structured, is it easy to read, and so on. And for the oral presentation, you have in fact 2 elements. You have we give a kind of grade on the presentation skills, and the second one on your ability to deal with the questions and to bring the correct answers. So just a few ideas in order you understand where you go. You will see also, and I give you an example here, that we have very clear and formalized rules on the presentation of a written report. For example, this is an example here of what you will get as a coverage page, and the administration of the school will provide you with one of these cover page. This is what is has to be written at the beginning. After that, you have also rules for representation of the abstract, but I will come back on that. An abstract, should summarize, in fact, in about 15 lines, which is short 15 lines, problem statement, the research method, the results and findings, and the conclusions, implication, and perhaps good practice you have identified. So you have the structure of the beginning of the written thesis. Okay, so it just in order that you understand better what is needed. So the last few minutes I already said a few words, on a few different points. the organization of a seminar, 4 sessions, 3 hours each, spread on between today and December, with very different topics. The two first half of presentations, in order to understand better what you are supposed to write. The third one will be on the topics. It will be my feedback, in fact, on the topic after reading all your individual proposals. And session 4 in December, 1 month later, 5 weeks later, will be on the preparation of the whole presentation. That's what we are doing. So already in these documents, you find several elements of interest for you in terms of how to choose a topic. You are free, but it should be validated by me. About the length, which is the first question, okay? About the steps, even if the schedule is not correct, and I will send you another updated schedule later, and you get some good idea, I think, about constraints in terms of format, required pages, printing also. Okay. So you already received this slide. I want now to move from this slide to another one. I hope I will find it easily, generally. That's my main problem. It is 68 as well. And you should be able to read it. And I hope that on your screen right now, what you see is topic quality question marks. If you don't see topic quality question marks, it means that there is something wrong. So don't tell me it's wrong. If it's not, I mean, I can use a slide and say a few words about the topics. What you find here on this first topic is a list of topics. Okay.
Sorry, Professor. We still see the guideline.
I still see the guidelines. Thank you. So let's start again. 68 should be this one. And now?
Yes, now we see the questions mark.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for your question. So these topics, are very classical topics, which are proposed by students. I took these topics, in the proposals coming issued from the last two intakes, and take 17, take 16, just to give you an example. Why question marks? It seems all these topics seems of interest. For example, the first one, project management, solar, beverages, solar projects, beverages, and so on. So what does it mean? It means that the student wanted to study different categories of projects, developing a factory, it was in a brewery, in fact, solar projects and some others, to try to compare them, and to try to find common ideas and differences in the financial strategy to develop to finance these projects. It seems to be a very good project, a very good topic. Anyway, it's quite difficult, to write a thesis on this topic. Why? First, because you have to find the data. I mean, if you study 2 solar projects, 2 projects in beverages, 2 projects in some kind of information system project and so on, that means you need to have interviews, not only one, probably, in 3, 4 different firms or teams with teams working on projects. So the question mark is on the feasibility. Is it feasible? Are you able to find these persons? Are you able to get an appropriate meeting long enough to get some details of interest, to raise your question, to use a questionnaire, to use at least, you know, a question list. Is it possible? So the first thing, you know, the first question is really feasibility. Is it feasible? First question to raise. Now, if you move to the second topic, control in banks and insurance companies, we have topics like this one, because some of you are working in banks, you know, they are have an experience in management control, financial control, and so on, you know, and they want to deal with that. And the difficulty we have here is that either the proposal is very general. What about control in banks and insurance companies? What are the steps of development? What are the drawbacks? What are the risks, and so on, which is not a topic for a thesis, or it is the control system, management control system in my bank, on my insurance company, and it becomes a kind of case study. And what we are waiting for is not only a case study. A case study can be part of the thesis, but it's a part, as it is, I will explain that later, it's part of the qualitative approach. But of course, qualitative approach, you have some others, interview, other case studies, comparison of case studies, for example, and you can have a quantitative approach also. Okay, so only one case study, even if it is with details, is not sufficient. And a general approach is not what we are waiting for. It's more for a textbook than for a CP for a thesis. We have very often credit risk management in banks. That means to be up to date. And all the banks, of course, have their own methods, approaches, function, scoring techniques, and so on. And it is the same problem. Either this proposal generally on credit risk management in banks in general, and it's more literature review than anything else, or it is credit risk management in my bank, and it's a very descriptive topic. In fact, you have to find something in between, and you have to find something which raises questions. That's what we will see later today. We need research questions. You need to find good research questions. You need to find the methodology. You need to find at least some elements of answer to your questions. 4, it was proposed by a student last time. It was with intake 17. Dividend policies in airlines. So it's a very difficult topic. It's a very difficult topic because of the pandemic. You know what's happened to the dividend policies of airlines, and it just disappeared. They were cancelled, stopped, no dividend. So of course you can explain that because the pandemic is there is no flight, and when there is no flight or limited number of flights, cash flows are very low, and if cash flows are very low, so it's difficult to make a distribution of dividend. Okay. It's not a good topic because you are in the middle of a crisis, and you should be able to explain at least what is the end of the story. I mean, what will happen at the end of in 2 years from now or 3 years from now if you expect when the pandemic will be over? Back to the preceding policy, to a new policy, which one? It's very dangerous to take a topic which is not or situations which are not over. Don't take, cases coming from 30 years ago. But anyway, it's much better, to find situation were quite stable, which is not the case here, or other. What happened to the dividend policies in airlines after the pandemic? You can have the same question with banks. We have, if you have a look to the international professional or academic literature, you will find many articles on dividend policies and banking system. What about the banking system policy for dividends in period of crisis? That could be a better topic because you have many more examples, because you have many more examples of banks, many more examples also of crisis. What's happened in 2012, what happened in 2008, what happened after when the internet bubble burst in 2000, 2001. So you have different steps of modification of dividend policies in the banks, Keynesi's, and over the world, with many more data and cases available. 5, all the topics on pandemic consequences with data and discontinuities. Airline 2021 perhaps will be very different at the time you will defend your thesis in 2022. So, you will, in fact, you will run after new data, new interview. You will follow the evaluation, the modifications, and you are not writing for a newspaper. You are writing a thesis, which is completely different. You are not in the same position. Sometimes, we have also topics which are very large and are more for course or for textbook than anything else. And point 6 here, financial leverage and international capital is a good example. What are the connection between financial leverage? Financial leverage, you met this concept in different courses, and the international capital movements, international capital markets. Of course, this is a topic of interest, but this is a very, very large topic. You can spend hours and hours of courses on that. You find this topic in textbook, what could be your contribution, and what can you bring, and how will you manage this very, very large topic? You need databases to do that. You need statistical approaches. You don't have the databases. perhaps your knowledge in statistics is not sufficient, and after that, you don't have the you don't have capacity to make the calculations probably. So be very careful. Topic 7, proposal 7 is another example. You have to be very careful with topics which are macro topics, because on macro topics, and this is you have an example here. Impact of a decision, or impact on investment policy, or impact of a pandemic on health, household expenses, economic growth. It will be very difficult for you to deal with that kind of topic. And you have competitors, in each country, in all the countries of the world, you find statistics bureau, or you find research teams. And they have the time, they have the experts, they have the calculation tools, the knowledge, the past experience, to go through these kind of macro studies. Very useful, these studies, but you are not, the best competitor on the market to produce a good study. So, be very careful in the choice. I don't say it's not I don't say it's bad topic. I say if you go on one of these ideas, you have to reduce the idea. It means you have to define a very, very limited perimeter in order to be able to deal in the 9th month to come with the topic, and to produce a high quality thesis. Okay. No, perhaps you will find a good topic, on the control in banks and insurance companies. The first question would be, when you reduce topic, is it all banks? And all banks in Vietnam, or all banks in the world? Or is it only part of the banks? The commercial banks, but inside the commercial banks, perhaps you have to reduce again and use a segment of a commercial bank. But on the other hand, you have to put some kind of comparison with international banks. Now, not all international banks, but perhaps a comparison with banks in Malaysia or in Thailand, for example. So you have to reduce. And after that, is it, when we say control, what does it mean? Is it control processes? Is it control specific operations? What is it? It is probably too large also. So some of these topics can be improved and can become good topics. Some of us, probably like the dividend policies in airlines, cannot be a good topic for the production of master thesis. And the same for topic number 7 here on macro studies. So spend time on finding a topic. Generally, the proposals coming from students are too large. They are at the same time too local. It means for you too Vietnamese. And they have not been at the beginning studied in terms of feasibility. Now you have better topics probably in this list here. Students like generally very up-to-date topics, not in the financial world only, but also in the media. For example, we have regularly proposals since 2015 on green topics, I would say, green bonds, green issues, green financial policies, and so on. Okay, so of course you can find good topics, but be very careful again. Don't try to follow what's happened every day on the markets or in the banking system. Don't try something too general. Green bonds in the world, for example, it's a very difficult topic. You don't have the data. Green bonds issued in Vietnam, I'm not sure there is really a topic. Number of green bonds issued is not sufficient. So you have to define clearly the topic in order it is feasible, in order to get the data, in order to get some kind of comparison also. It is clear we have also potentially good topics on new players, particularly on fintech. Fintech, we cannot write topic on fintech, in general. You have so many kind of fintech in the world. Either you take a topic like fintech in portfolio management, something like that, or you can have a topic on fintech and banks. What are their relations? What's happened? Do they sign the contract together? Do they create joint ventures? Are some fintechs bought by banks, or are they linked with them with minority stakes? So you will find good topics on this one, but you have really to reduce the topic. It cannot be fintech or fintech and banks in general. It's really too large. But there is something to do there. For the last few years, we had also different topics on M&A, but you have more and more M&A in Vietnam, as we have everywhere in the world today. Also, we have many example case studies and so on. But again, you have to reduce the topic. Are you dealing with hostile, friendly M&A? Are you dealing at the same time in the industrial and the financial and non-financial sectors? Are you dealing with companies listed on the market or others? Do you take into account M&A between countries located in different countries, companies located in different countries? Or is it only an industry? Very often M&A in an industry is enough, as a topic. M&A, for example, in an economic sector where you find many small, medium-sized firms like the food industry could be feasible. You can even have a comparison between countries at this level. You can use also financial operations, more modern topics, I would say, even if it's not very developed in Vietnam right now, like share buyback. What about share buyback? What about share buyback and dividend? Is it better to distribute dividend or to buy back shares? Why? What are the examples? What is the regulation? What is the practice? Is a Vietnamese practice different or similar to what's happening in some of the countries in the world? There's something to do there. We had each year we have one or two good phases on accounting rules, practice, modifications. it's around generally IFRS and consolidation. Okay, but it cannot be only on the description of a regulation and their modification. It has to take into account the application, the examples, case studies, and so on. So probably also interviews at the same time with members of large audit companies, but also accounting managers from firms involved in the process of application of the IFRS or improvement of the consolidation processes in their groups. 5, we still have NPL. NPL is still there, a problem of loans, of the weight of NPL in the balance sheet of the bank. It is a recurrent phenomena, recurrent topic. It's of interest if you can bring something new. If it's just to say, okay, we have NPL, in the balance sheet of the banks, and we created a bad bank years ago, but we still try to improve the system and to reduce the number and bad loans. It's not sufficient. So you have to find a question and a contribution there, which is not so easy. What is probably more of interest is to make an international comparison. Many countries are in that kind of situation. Banks have in the balance sheet, non-profitable loans, and they tried with very often, government support. They try to manage this problem. What are the techniques? What are the success? What are the failure, and why? There's something of interest. Something new, and which is developing now in Vietnam, as in many countries also, is a thesis on infrastructure and financial engineering in infrastructure. This is something which could be very, very interesting, because when you go in that kind of topic, you meet very different problems, new techniques, PPP, BOT, and some others, and you raise also the problem in how to finance, an infrastructure program. How to do that in Vietnam when you have to finance these line of metro lines, underground lines in Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, and perhaps in some other cities later. What to do with railways if you want to develop a network, and for example, if you want to create sometime high-speed train along the coasts, at least between Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, how to finance airports also. So for years, all these investments were financed on the state budget. But it is clear that in many countries, and Vietnam is not very different from others, we have also to find other resources. There's also not only a problem of resources, but there's a problem of management of these infrastructure, which is not so easy, more and more technical, and we have firms in the world which are experts in that kind of management and financial techniques. So how to integrate that in Vietnamese context, and how to compare the situation in Vietnam and when infrastructure to be built in Vietnam and in other countries. What are the similitudes and differences? What could be the good practice? That's a good topic there. 7, we still have topics on consumer lending market, which is developing in many countries in Vietnam, and comparisons are very easy. Management of consumer credits, and still a good topic, even the contribution you can bring is very limited, I think. If you want something which is clearly new, you should be you should have an interest on financial platforms and crowdfunding. And crowdfunding is developing, not only for gifts or for rewards, but also for more classical lending techniques or lending needs, or also on equity. And if you have a look in the world today, the main development in terms of economic sector is in real estate. So perhaps there's something which is a kind of prospective topic on the crowdfunding and financial platform in Vietnam. How to manage also financial platform? What kind of regulation can you have? Is it very risky or not? What are the returns there? What is the price of risk? All these elements, all these questions can be asked. So that's probably more up to the topic, or at least first set of list. What I can show you before moving to topic weaknesses, perhaps, and that is somewhere here. I think I will find it. Where is it? No, I don't find it here. I will send it to you, or you received. I sent it to Tram and to Lynn, so probably they send you this list. It was a list of the past topics of the past intake, and you will see that they are very similar to what I presented here. So to summarize, topic weaknesses. No? A topic is too difficult without room for any kind of good publication, with data difficult to be collected. I should add with discontinuities, like for the dividends in airlines, that's very difficult to deal with, very risky. Second point, a topic needs a clear perimeter and limits. If you deal with risk management in the bank, it's not risk management in all the banks in the world. It's not even probably risk management in all the banks in Vietnam. It's something more limited, reduced, as we say, in research. So you have to define clearly what is in the topic, what is not in the topic, what kind of bank, what kind of control processes, and so on. Okay, and this is one of the initial basic questions: is what are the limits? What is the perimeter of my topic? Be very careful to another point. Many topics, and even first draft of thesis are too descriptive. It's a kind of story. You describe the control systems in the bank in Vietnam. This is not what we are looking for. We need to be more analytical, empirical. We need research question. I will come on that point. We need methodologies. We need data collections. We need discussion. We need results. And at the end, we need also good practice and warnings also. In the same kind of element here of slide, be careful to a topic on one project development. I will present the development of a new airport in Ho Chi Minh City, or I will present, the largest solar project in Vietnam. This is of interest as an example, as a case study, but it is not a topic. I will come back also on that point 4, but you have to understand at that level now, at the beginning of the process, that many of you will use also interviews. But as I write here, interviews are not meetings, drinking a coffee or tea or whatever you want. It is a scientific process. I mean, when you make an interview, you need a basic documents, and the basic documents could be, if it is an interview, you get 45 minutes and you know what you want, you need a questionnaire, very clear, structured questionnaire with open, close question, but you need a questionnaire. If it is short, particularly if it's done through your mobile, or if it is done with customers, the exit of a bank, it could be done with what we call an interview guide. It means you get a short list of questions, something like 8 to maximum 10 short questions, and you catch the information. You can use both in the same topic, because, for example, in the bank, on the topic in the bank, you will make interview with customers, short, and you will make on the same topic interviews with experts, managers, longer. But it's not a kind of conversation and meeting you have in the train or in the plane between Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, or in drinking a coffee, or in the middle of restaurant. 5, some students said, okay, if you don't want one case study, I'm going to bring you 7 case study. And it becomes a list. They have case study 1, case study 2, case study 3, case study 4. And after that, there's nothing else. Even if you bring the case studies, you have to do something with case study. It means generally mainly comparison between the case studies first. What is different, what is similar, why, and also what we find in this case study. Is it similar or is it different to what we find in the literature? It means in the references which are available for us. Many students want to do something on Vietnam. This program is a great opportunity for you to learn about outside the country. So generally, Vietnamese case studies only are not so good. And Vietnamese references in the literature, that's not enough. You have to integrate them. But on many topics today, in finance, the best references are published in American journals. Some are published in journals, academic or professional journals in other countries, in Europe, in Japan, for example. So you have to integrate this with worldwide references, data which are available. Open the window, as I write on another slide you will see later. You and trying to go outside, cross the borders. So these are some weaknesses. So I come back here on the selection of a topic without reference in Vietnam. or no up-to-date references. The problem of being up-to-date, the problem to be international is an important question. Work on your title. Many students, they try to, at the beginning, to find a title which is on the format like FinTech and banks, financial engineering and infrastructure, financial control and commercial banks. These are not titles. Perhaps they are titles for an article, in a kind of generalist journal, but they are not titled for. They are not titled for a thesis. You need something which is more clear, give you an idea what you are going to do. Very often it's useful to have a title and a subtitle. Something like infrastructure financial policies, how to use PPP and BOT. Perhaps it's not perfect, but it is better. Third here, define clearly the methodology and explain your choice. So we'll come back in details on methodologies. But you find at that level two categories of methodologies. The first ones are what we call qualitative, the other ones are quantitative. Generally, the best, physicists use at the same time qualitative and quantitative methodologies. Qualitative methodologies means mixed methodologies, what you find on Problem 4. Qualitative methodologies, require generally interviews with interview guide or a questionnaire and case study comparisons. Quantitative means that you use some kind of quantitative tool. So generally students think immediately to regression because all of you have good knowledge now, you start course in regression analysis, you know how to do that, you have found the software, and you know how to interpret the result, the question of the distance, the question of the variance, and so on. So you want to you want to make regression. No? Perhaps it's but it depends on the topic. It depends on the data. It depends what you are looking for. For example, for students involved in M&A topics, the most, I would say, classical quantitative approach is what we call event studies. Event studies means, for example, you try to measure the consequences of an announcement on the price share. So we have very common, available on the internet software to deal with that kind of problem, which measure what we call the abnormal returns and what we call the memory effect. So you have to choose the right quantitative methods for getting some kind of result, new information on your topic. But don't say that at the beginning, I don't want to go for quantitative approaches. Very often they bring something, they bring a contribution. And second, if you decide to make a quantitative analysis, don't concentrate only on linear regression. Linear regression can be very useful, but they are not useful in front of all the cases and topics you will deal with. Point 5 here, This is what I said. Interviews can be organized with a questionnaire and an interview guide. They have to be organized. That's the message. Yeah. I would come back on that point, but anyway, you will use, of course, the element coming from your questionnaire and interview guide using them. And you will present your questionnaire, your interview guide, and a summary of the interviews in an appendix. Generally, it is appendix 3 of your thesis. Also, very often we use, interviews to prepare the main part of a study. For example, if you have a qualitative approach with expert, using expert interview, and you need to prepare a very professional, detailed questionnaire. What we do generally before, it's at least one pilot, what we call a pilot interview. It means you try to design a questionnaire and you make a test on with a person who generally which help you bring some new elements, new questions, in order you modify, you improve the quality of your question before starting really the interviews. So pilot interviews are there to prepare the use of a questionnaire and improve the quality of a first draft of a questionnaire. When you get results also, either coming from quantitative analysis like case study comparisons, or even through interview, for example, from the customer in the bank, or when you find the results coming from a model or quantitative approach, something which is very useful in the discussion and validation. Remember this word, discussion and validation. Now you get results and you want to discuss and you want to validate your results. And this can be done through one or two more interviews. Okay. So interview can be used as a pilot interview, can be used as a validation interview, and it can be used also with questionnaire or through an interview guide to collect information, to collect data. A few methodological suggestions here. Okay. You will have to design a kind of a personal schedule. We are now by the middle or 2/3 of September. That's nearly the end of September 2021. And you have to defend in the second part of June 2022. Okay. So you have to prepare a personal plan, a personal schedule, if you prefer, in order to be in time. Time is short. You have to be very careful. No. However, don't go too fast in the first steps. Spend time looking for references, information, cases, reading the references, in order to try to obtain or to catch good knowledge of the topic. This is very important. And this is also during this period that you will find the right dimension of a topic. You will reduce analysis the topic. You will define the perimeter. You will identify the limits also of a topic. Second, simultaneously, you will identify references, professionals, and also academics, could be coming from journals, academic journal, professional journal, but also for reports on some topic. Good information is coming from reports coming from international institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, regional banks, or OECD, and some others. You should also have a look to the information, of course, available of websites. And you will have to organize the presentation of the references, and I will show you that in detail later, according to rules. This is what we call the international standards or international rules, or Harvard, the name of the US university, standards or rules. It means all these references should be presented according to rules of presentation. They have to be organized and segmented by categories: academic journal, professional journals, international reports, and so on. And inside each category, the main criteria is the last name of the authors. After that, you have specific rules for each category for the presentation of the title, of the volume, and so on, the journal, and so on. So do that with standardized presentation in a specific file right now. And each time you register a reference, do it according to the international standard. It's very difficult, when you're on by the end of April or beginning of May, at the time you have your thesis is nearly finished. It's very, very difficult if you forgot one element of the reference to go back to the journal, to the report, and so on, and you don't have the time necessary to do that. So it becomes at night, it becomes really a nightmare. Do it right now. Another point is here, use macro and micro analysis. What does it mean? On some topic, and many topics anyway, you have elements at the macro level. Position of regulators, for example. International agreements behind. But we need micro analysis. Mainly, it means we need elements, data, interviews done in corporate firms, corporate and banks. So you can go from the macro level to micro level and back. That's good. This is very often very useful to develop your presentation and to bring good information, good results on the topic. Again, now it's I will say that anyways very often. Develop international comparisons between firms, banks, countries. Don't stay only in your country. You always learn a lot from the others, with different culture, different languages, different laws, different history, and so on. So use other experiences and make comparisons. This is something which is very, very useful in the process of producing a good thesis. Design a comparison framework. You can have a comparison framework. with a set of criteria. You want to compare on the topic, the position of banks in 3 or 4 countries, you can have a list of criteria. And you compare several banks in the different countries you have chosen according to this criteria. And generally, we have a table and we try to fill the squares or rectangles of a table, and then we make comments, discuss, underline the similitudes and the differences, and try to explain the differences, which is generally the main point. 6, don't hesitate to use quantitative methods, but the right method, which will bring something on your topic. This is what I already said, but it is written here right now. Another set of suggestions here. Point 1 is very important. Spend time on the introduction with a clear and simple structure. An introduction is not there, to describe what's happened in your topic during the last 2 centuries. An introduction is short in research. An introduction is very often organized in a few paragraphs, in total something like 2 pages in average. What could be these paragraphs? The first one is a presentation of your topic. What is my topic? What is the title? What is the subtitle? Why did I choose this title and subtitle? What is the interest of a topic? What are my motivations? And perhaps the most important part, what are, the perimeter and the limits? Is it a topic only on Vietnam? Is it a topic only on Southeast Asia with 3 countries, comparison? Is it a topic on the banks, but all the banks, part of them? What is the segmentation criteria, size, commercial versus other activities, foreign state-owned bank, whatever you want, but we have to know that. What are you doing also? Is it a kind of picture today? Or do you include an analysis of the evolution for the last 5 or 10 years? So this is paragraph number 1. You define your topic, you identify the title, subtitles, your motivations, the interest of the topic, the perimeter and the limits. You don't need to write pages and pages of that. Even if you explain clearly, it takes what? 15, 20 lines. That's enough. Second paragraph of an introduction. Second paragraph is mainly the research question. But before dealing with the research question, a few lines on the references could be useful. It's not a list of references, but it is, where do we find good, really useful references on my topic? Is it in academic journals? Is it in Vietnamese journals? Is it in American journals? Is it in reports coming from the IMF and another international institution? Is it on such kind of websites? First point. Second point is about qualitative approaches. Do you use qualitative approaches? Interviews, what kind of interviews? Questionnaire, interview guide, pilot interview, data collection interview. Do you use case study? What kind of case study? How do you organize the case study? Is it a comparison? Is it a comparison with Vietnamese experiences, or we introduce here the international dimension also? What do you do? Quantitative. Do you develop a quantitative approach? Do you develop a quantitative approach? That's methodology. Now, it could be event studies, it could be regression, as I said before. And this is paragraph 3, and should be in line, of course, with paragraph 2, second one, which is the research question. So you have paragraph 1, topic, presentation of a topic. You have the interest of the topic, the motivations, the perimeter, the limits. Paragraph 2, you have a research question. I come back in details in a moment. Paragraph 3, the problem of methodologies. Where are the good references? What about qualitative approach? What about quantitative approach? In the second paragraph on the research question, generally what you find is first what we call a problematic. It means a very large question, which is a kind of envelope question. And then you have a research question. It's in general, it's 2 to 4. And these questions are such that they can be developed, studied using one of the methodology mentioned in paragraph 3. And they are such that you are expecting elements of answers at the end of your thesis. Sometimes you get also with the research question, sub-questions. You get sub-questions. And sub-questions are very precise and detailed question with generally a quantitative result. This is what we are expecting from you. Last paragraph of an introduction after the methodology, the topic and interest parameter and so on, the research questions, the methodologies, and now you have a last paragraph which cannot be written even as a draft right now. It is a presentation of your chapters. This paragraph will be written, prepared later. Okay. But really, I think that it's not like in a report when you write your introduction at the end. This is my advice. You have better to write a draft of your introduction right now. It will move, it's not, the thesis preparation is not a linear organization, linear writing. Of course it is linear. We will move from introduction to references and some others. I will go into detail, but you have loops, feedbacks, you will improve them. It's a kind of first draft to first architecture, if you want. But of course, along the weeks and months, you will work on the topic, it will move. Second point here, write short introductions and conclusion at the beginning and end of each chapter. So this is very, very important for two reasons. The first one, it has to be, a thesis has to be clear, well structured, easy to read for the reader, easy to understand. And one of the key is to make introduction, saying in chapter what you are going to do, what you are going to present. Okay. And at the end of each chapter, you get conclusions. And what is a conclusion? The conclusion can be very short. It could be 4 or 5 lines. And it is basically the answer to a simple question. What are the 3 or 4 main elements we have to keep in mind for using them in further chapters, or at least in the result, presentation, validation, and discussion. Point 3 is about results in general. It means you start with introduction. After that, you will get generally 2 chapters. The first one, and I will come back in detail on that, which is the context, the environment. It's a short chapter generally, and it is written as a good economic or financial paper, what you can find in the Financial Times and The Economist, for example. This is the point, you know. And chapter number 2 is what we call a literature review, which is based on the references. I will come back later on that. Introduction, reference list. Chapter 1, context and environment. Chapter 2, literature review. Okay. After that, you get your what we call analytical chapters. And at the end, when you have written on that, all these chapters, you know, you have 2 to 4 analytical chapters. There is no rule, depends on the topic. And if you have one chapter, chapter 1, for example, for the context, chapter 2 for literature review, let's say 3 chapters after that for analytical approaches, it's 5. And your chapter 6, will be on the presentation of the results. This is my point 4 here. So you present your results. Then you discuss your results and you validate your results. And last, you get your recommendation. We don't need recommendation on all the topics, but on some of them, we need recommendations. So if we have only 1 or 2 pages of recommendation, it could be a last element of the chapter on the results. It means you have a presentation of results, discussion, validation, and then recommendations. If recommendations are more important, more detailed, for example, you have recommendations at the same time to management, to shareholders, to regulator, and so on, perhaps you need an independent chapter. It would be after the results. At the end of this process, after all these elements, you will get, of course, a conclusion. But conclusions are very short because everything has been done. Conclusions in that kind of phase is generally very short, 2 pages, no more. And it is done, it is divided into 2 parts. The first one is on the result in terms of what you expected to do, what was your plan, what did you do, what was not done first. And second quarter, the future, what are the future steps of the topic? It means we're in June 2022, and we say at the time you defend, okay, you have made a good job, but now we need another 3 months. We give you another 3 or 4 months, in order to improve your paper. What will be your action plan? And then perhaps you have a very good topic, but you have just time to deal with a small part of the topic. And if you have 2 years or 3 years with free time, if you are in the Ministry of Finance or you are in a large research team in a bank, what will be the main question to deal with with an horizon of 3 years, for example? And then after this conclusion, you get, this is what you find here in point 6, you get the appendices. And for appendices, you find, I would say, good practice in terms of presentation. The first one is on the figures, the graphs, and the tables. It means probably you will have in your paper figures, graphs, and tables. Each of them should have a number and should have also a title, a number and a title. Okay. Now in Appendix 1, make the list of it. You don't present the graphs or the tables. You present figure 1, growth rate in the Vietnamese economy, page 34, and so on. The second appendix is for abbreviation. Perhaps you will use abbreviation IMF, International Monetary Fund, page 32. Okay. After that, number 3 is generally longer because you introduce here many elements of your qualitative approach: questionnaires, interview guides, summaries of interviews. And you can also have other appendixes if this is needed. Okay, so this is the structure, the main points of the structure. Remember what I said very quickly at the beginning. Before the introduction, you get a cover page with your name, MEBF, intake, topic, so on. And after that, you get generally a free page. Free page is in paper. The cover page is provided by the school, by CVG. And after that, number 3 is what we call acknowledgement. It's a free page acknowledgement. You can do whatever you want. You can have a quotation. You can say thank you to my cat, to my dog, for supporting me during the time I wrote my thesis. You do whatever you want. Next will be abstracts and keywords. So abstracts in English, keywords in English. You can make a translation in another language if you want, in Vietnamese or in another one. This is your problem. 15 lines, that's what I said, and presented before. Okay, and then your table of content. I really think you have to kind of position on all these stories about appendixes. I really think it's better to put them at the end, and that is better for the reader. Think to the reader to move immediately from the table of content to the introduction, and all the other elements, put them at the end into the appendix after the conclusion and the reference list. So this is what I wanted to show you on this slide. I would probably repeat some elements several times, but I think it's part of the game. other suggestion on specific points here. A few tables, figures, and graphs could be useful in the core. The other should be in appendix. It means very often, on some topics, it happens on many topics, large percentage at least, you have too many graph, figures, and tables. And a thesis should not be full with pages full of table, figures, and graphs and just a few lines of comments. It should be sentences. Of course, from time to time, you can add a figure, a graph, or a table. But if you have too many of them and you think they are useful for the reader, make a selection. Keep the most important one in the core and move all the other in an appendix, and generally it is appendix 4. Be very careful also on references. I gave you some idea on how to present your references, and I will send you an example. But anyway, you have to check also that all the references which are used in the core are listed in the references bibliography. The opposite is not true. You can have more references, excuse me, in the references than in the core. It means references as the first goal, which is to summarize or to make a list of all the references used in the core, but they can also open the reader to other references on the topic which are not used in the core. I give you also an advice on the reference presentation. Very often you find authors using footnotes. Footnotes are very difficult to manage. It's much easier, to use the simple presentation, which is here on point 3. You say in an article, the Dupont said that bank control system and so on, with parentheses, Dupont, comma, 2016, parentheses. And if a reader wants the full reference, you will go to the references at the end of your thesis, and you will find Dupont, G, the title, Journal of Political Economy, 2016, volume 23, page 344. Okay. But in the core itself, it's easier to manage at the same time for you, right? And also for the reader. So I came back here saying use international standard. I already said this. Point 4 is just what I said a few minutes ago on the conclusions. Don't try to come back on the results in the conclusion. You had a chapter on the presentation, the discussion, and the validation of results. So it's already done. Now you should underline what has been done, not done. What are the potential improvement of the thesis in a very short period of time, 3-4 months. And after that, you should try to identify questions, for future research. It means for longer research, not a few weeks, but 2, 3, 4 years, with also the support of research budgets and research teams. Last point here on that slide is about the abstract and the keywords. Many students do that, at the end when they have no time, they are already late, and abstracts are poor. And don't forget that the abstract is the first thing you read when you find a thesis. You don't read the 100 pages of a thesis. You want to know what is inside, what was the question raised, what were the research questions, the methodologies, the results, and the recommendations. So it has to be written, very, very carefully. Have to make a draft and improve progressively the draft. Keywords are also very important because, the references of your thesis on internet is organized around the name of the author, yours, but also around the keywords. So if you want that your thesis is known and read, if you want it is the classification is adequate, you have to find the right keywords. That's also with the question of the languages. Of course, it should be in English. Of course, this program is delivered in English, but it could be useful for you on such or such topic to have a translation of the abstract and the keywords in another language, whatever it is. It could be Vietnamese, but it could be in Japanese, in Chinese, in Korean, in French, in German, whatever you want, whatever you think it's useful. There is no limit. I see in Europe the situation is a bit different from Southeast Asia. Most of my students present at least 3 different abstracts in English and French, German, Spanish, Italian, very, very often. So perhaps to reconcile that and to put it more clear, I understand you are not very familiar with reproduction of a thesis. This is something you have to learn. You have to learn on a topic, but you have to learn how to write a thesis. What are the steps? How after that to present a thesis? Okay. So what you will find here on this slide is a summary, a checklist, if you prefer, of the first steps to go through. First, you should start writing a draft of the introduction. You have to start from somewhere. Remember that. Don't say, I will try, to find a case first, make an interview, read some articles, and write a few pages, and perhaps inform, and from now on we start writing a paragraph on the research questions. That's not the right way to go through. Start writing a draft of introduction. It will be what it will be. Of course, if in July you compare the final draft, the final versions and the present draft, you will think that this initial draft is poor. But this is not the problem. We have to know where we go. Okay? That means you have to start from somewhere. You will need a first draft. You will improve it. So, you have the necessary time to come back, what you call here, to activate retro action loops. They are allowed, of course. Second, remember the 3 paragraph structure. It will be 4 at the end. and check all the items, that all the items have been taken into account. Whether it's something on the title, the subtitle, something on the interest, something on motivation, something on the perimeter, the limits, and so on. Okay. Check that all the items I already mentioned have been taken into account in the first, in the writing of the first draft of this introduction. Now, at the same time, start designing a reference list and organize this reference list according to the international Harvard standards. As soon as you have something which looks like a topic, even before I validate your topic, start, looking for references, designing a reference list, and organize it according to the final presentation required, which are the international or Harvard standards. When you have, at the same time, your validation of your topic and you have a reference list, something which is not free of references, a reference list. And very often you will see that reference list, where they are between 40 and 50 references. You have to deal with these references. And to deal, I mean, you need some kind of knowledge of them. And you will understand that it is nearly impossible to read in details all of them. So a good strategy is to read all the abstracts, all these articles, reports, and so on. They have got abstracts. Read the abstracts and try to identify what are the references, which seems to be, it's subjective, of course. It's not objective and it's not managed by a model. And identify the references you think are the best ones. Choose among them, among these references, according to your to the reading of the abstract. Choose among the 50 or 60, something like 12, 15, no more, which seems more important, central. And then you will read these references. In this, you have to read, but you have to read a selected number of references in detail. Okay. One good way also to start with a reference list is to have a look to preceding thesis. Even if they are not exactly on the same topic, if they deal with a topic like M&A, probably you will find at the end in the references of this thesis good references on M&A. It's the easiest way, and this is the road. It is the easiest way to start with the references. Start with references of other past students or past authors. And if you find some of them, you will find immediately other references. If you have identified good reference on M&A, you have a look to the article on M&A, and you find 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 new references. So it comes very, very quickly. The problem for many topics is not to find references. is to find the right references according to the perimeter, to the minutes of your topic, and also to find updated references. Because when you do what I suggest, very often you find references published 4 or 5 years ago, which could be very useful, but something is missing. If the thesis was defended 2 years ago, but you don't find the last 2 years references published. So you have to take into account also this element. When you have done this, you can start writing the 2 first chapters. And the 2 first chapters are, I already said that a few minutes ago, 2 first chapters are chapter 1 on the context, the environment, the main issue. And as I write here in point 5, it should be written as a top economic financial article. You are writing a presentation which not we don't need 20 pages. If you have a look to good articles in economies, British economies, in Financial Times, Business Weeks, they are short articles. It could be something like 5-6 pages, A40 category. That's enough. It's a professional article. It's well written, right words, but it's not academic writing. It's professional writing. Second, you have a chapter 2. And in chapter 2, it's a literature review. This is generally the most difficult point to understand for students which are not accustomed to write thesis. What does it mean? Remember what I said. You have a reference list. Reference list is presented according to the international or Harvard standards. You have made a selection among them. And among your 50 or 60 references, you have chosen, something like 12 to 15. And you read carefully several times each of them. And you start having a good knowledge of the question rates, of the ideas of the authors, of what was found, the different contributions, methods used, and so on. And this is what we are interested in a literature review. A literature review is not a summary of the different articles you have identified. It is a presentation of the main ideas which are in the 10, 12, or 15 articles or reports you have selected. What are they? There's no rule again. The experience shows that January is something like 6, 7, could be 5, could be 8 in some cases. And what you are going to do in the reference list, it's a presentation of these ideas. You will present, number 1, explain what it is. What are the authors which have studied, developed these ideas? How they did that? Model, uneven studies, interviews, case studies, something else. What kind of data did they use also? And what kind of contribution, what kind of results? You do that on the first idea, you do that after that, idea 2, idea 3, idea 4, idea 5. This is what we are waiting. Why do we do that? Why do we go through that kind of boring element, boring chapter? First, because you here have a good knowledge of what has been written, you have, and you get a good knowledge of the topic. This is the first point. The second one, of course, you are looking from new material, what we call new material. It means you will develop your own cases, your own interviews, your own models. But perhaps you will find good cases, good interviews in some of the papers, and you are allowed in the core of your thesis to use these cases, these interviews, and so on. The only thing which is compulsory is to say, I use this case, I've done my 4 cases, but I had 2 more coming from the article by Smith and the article by Dupont, and you give the origin, the source. Where is it coming from? It is coming from the European Finance Review, 1996, something like that. So you try to catch new material, to make comparison, to enlarge your comparison. In some cases, if you are very lucky, you will find databases. And sometimes there's a link, in an article, and you click on the link, and you find databases. Probably you are not able, to design the databases. You have no time, don't have the necessary means to do that. So you are very happy. And you can use the databases, giving the origin of the databases in the core, but you can use it. You can also find in that chapter, going through the different ideas of the different authors, good research questions. You have your own. You have written first draft of your introduction, but you can now improve your introduction. If you think that a research question you found in an article is very useful, very good, you can add this question into your research question and introduce, of course, this question into the list of your research question in the second paragraph of your introduction. So this is a very classical loop. You have there. And last, I would say last, a literature review, is very useful because for each idea, you summarize the results, recommendations of the different authors. And this will be for you very useful when you reach the chapter on the results, your chapter on your results. You will make a presentation of your results, you will discuss them, but you will validate them. And to validate results, you get 2 different ways. The first one is to make a presentation to 1 or 2 practitioners and understand their comments, reactions. And the second one is to compare your results with the results coming from your literature review. And this is very important because, you will find similitudes and differences. Some of your results are identical to some of the results you have mentioned in your literature review, which are coming from the articles you have read. Some are completely different, and very often, it's partly the same, partly different. So what you try to identify are the similitudes and the differences. And of course, we are waiting for your comments on the differences, because in these differences, very often, this is where you find something new, which is what we call your contribution. And the contribution of a thesis is one of the main points, the jury member at the end are looking for. What is brought by the study, to the existing knowledge? Is a study on a summary what has been done? Or do the author add something more, produce something more, produce a contribution? So these are the first steps to go through. And I would say at that stage, this is what you have to do. Of course, you need a topic, you need introduction, you need a reference list, you need a kind of reading period and selection of the best articles, and you have to write chapter 1 and chapter 2. So this is what I wanted to present you with a set of slides. I hope it was clear enough. It's not so easy to understand, so this is the reason why I planned these different sessions, on a 3-month period. We'll come back on that. And anyway, you will have an individual feedback on your first paper. I will send you back my individual feedback. So don't worry, but start with the beginning. So let's say it is, we have been developing my arguments and my presentation for 2 hours right now. Let's have, if you don't mind, 5 minutes break. We have 5 minutes break and we come back, and we start with another set of slides. So thank you very much. Back in 5-6 minutes, something like that. Okay. Writing with writing a CP. arrêter. C'est bizarre parce que c'est pas du tout structuré comme. Okay, I think it's time to start again. I move from my set of slides I use in the preceding hours. They are called slides 68, 6 and 8. And now I use to give you some more suggestions and details, a few slides prepared by Professor Chan. You will have the opportunity also, and you know him, to meet with Professor Chan. He's involved also in the process of managing this production of thesis, which is a long way, and he's in Vietnam, so it's also easier to meet the students, particularly during this time. So let's have a look to the slides. Some of the slides underline common elements I already explained. So I will go quick on that. But he introduces also some other suggestions which are very, very useful. Okay, so this is my proposal right now. He has got here a first slide, which is number 2 slide, and the number 2 slide. That's it. Yeah. Give you some objectives. If there's something very important on that side, it is a reader. Think, to the reader. You have to sell your document, and this is very often forgotten by students and by the researcher also. It means it has to be pleasant, easy to read, well structured. Even when you start with the first pages as a reader, it's like when you read a book. You want to spend the night to come to read up to the last page. And the second point here is on the relation between the format, the organization, and your ideas. I describe the first steps to go through: the introduction, the reference list, the reading step, the selection step, chapter 1, chapter 2. Okay. But the difficulty is to integrate your ideas into that format, So, you have to work on that. It should not look artificial. This format is as it is, but reader should think that it is the right one to present your ideas. It should fit somehow. Okay, nothing else on the number of pages when we discuss that. Recommendations on also on the space and how to write what kind of character, New Roman 13 point. Okay, so this is a question often raised and it is solved now. Next one. The main word here is iterative. It means, that's what I said once, back loops. Of course, you have a linear process, but you have loops also. Don't hesitate to write. There will be drafts of different qualities. You have a first draft, the second draft, the third draft, okay? And you will improve progressively the draft. So as soon as you get references, cases, notes, files, and so on, write a draft. And this draft will be progressively improved. And start with a draft of introduction. It takes time, but it's much easier to do than to accumulate, information, references, interviews, and without really nothing useful for final version available before the beginning of the month of May. So it's much better, to improve by what is written here, successive work of writing, and to wait. be very careful also what's happened every year. Students have all their information, data collected, draft on the computer, and the computer is lost or computer is broken. So, save at least in 2 different places. Right? This is my recommendation. And this is Professor Chan's recommendation also. Some more general advices. Try to explain in simple words. Very often, technical words are not useful. Your thesis should be read by non-expert readers, or even by high qualified executives, but perhaps your CEO. But he's not coming from finance, he's coming from marketing. He doesn't understand finance at all. He should understand. He should be able to read. So what you can do also is to have, the goal written in simple language with tables, with cases which are more technical, more complicated, That means your thesis can be read by different persons. Those without a good knowledge in the field, and those who are nearly excellent or excellent in the field. Another point which is very important here is the last element. Don't try to say all. A good thesis requires also a selection of the information, of the elements, of the details. It's much better, even if you have collected a large number of data, you have made a large number of interviews, to stay in the format of 60 pages with the most important, well-structured, easy to read elements, and to present appendixes. It's possible to have 60 pages in the core and 60 pages in the appendixes. And perhaps also, if you have more, you have to make a selection, and some of the elements you have, even if you think they are important, will not be integrated. You cannot say all. You are not working for the Nobel Prize. I hope some of you will get the Nobel Prize in a few years. But it's too early. You have to go step by step. Understand what is the goal. You need to get a master's degree by October 2022. And to reach this result, you have to defend the thesis in June 2022. And we are in September 2021. So we need good quality thesis. But you are not writing, an 800-page, dictionary on your topic. This is not the goal. So don't try to say all. So now it's easier to understand here. Write separate files. Okay. We have rules for that, for abbreviation, tables, figures, what we call annexes or appendixes or exhibits. Introduction and conclusion. But when you start writing, and this is the first point, for each chapter, start writing with an outline. Don't start writing first, writing what you think. Organize, structure, prepare an outline, and then write into the different part of the outline. Now, after that, there is a problem of order of writing. So you have to write first, find the topic, write the introduction, references, it's what we said, read chapter 1, chapter 2. Okay, so this is the first draft. And when you read the there, you will know where you go. Then all the other elements can be done according to your preference. Some students prefer, to rewrite the introduction and improve it and concentrate on that. Some of us say, okay, I've got already, a draft of introduction, a draft of chapter 1 and chapter 2. Now I move to the analytical chapter. Now we'll be back on the introduction, chapter 1, chapter 2 later. This has to be done according to your preference. Linking paragraph is what I said, introduction, transition, conclusion. That's very, very useful. Point 3 is interesting also. At the end, when we have written all the elements, come back on the introduction and the conclusion. Or it will be for final rewriting. But, you have to write the first draft of introduction right now. But at the end, come back on the introduction. Probably we will prove it again. Same for the conclusion. Very often also, and this is the last point here, you understand me and you think you have found a good title and subtitle. And weeks after weeks, you are moving, and in April, suddenly, if you go back to your title and subtitle, you understand that the content is not anymore in line with the title and subtitle. So you have to adapt. It means you have to adapt the title and or the subtitle. So this is as the introduction and the conclusion. In the last steps, this is something you should not forget. Adapt the title, the subtitle, the last element of the introduction and the conclusion at the end. Style. Style is, as it is written here, something which is personal and proper to each individual. However, we give you some advices. And this is a consequence of what I said, it should be easy to read by anyone, even if it is not an expert. It should not be boring. It should be clear and well structured. And to reach these goals, you should build short and simple sentences, not 5-line sentences. You should try to avoid repetitions, words, expression, data, ideas. Try to use vocabulary, synonyms. Don't adapt a copy from darker sources. Write by yourself. And this is at the same time for the understanding what you read, but also we measure, you know, the original character of your writing. And for that, we use an specific software, internet software, which is what we call an anti-plagiarism process. The one used by CFVG is the EFORUS software, and the EFORUS software is used, you know, to validate all the phases which are written by the students, and we have immediately two elements. The first one is a score, a grade, if you like, on 100. And you will know what is the percentage of words, sentences, ideas, which are not original, which are coming from some of the books, article, report, and so on. And we know the source. We know that this paragraph is coming from Smith, 2015, in the Journal of Multifocal Funds. So we know the score, we know where are the problems, we have a complete report on that. And of course, a limited, you know, a limited copy is accepted if the source is identified. If a source is not identified, it's not acceptable. So be very careful. We require, you know, we require original faces. No faces made of a partial copy of different articles and preceding faces. Be careful also to the language in terms of orthograph, grammar, quality of the English, you know. Even if today, you know, English is not a British language, it's a kind of worldwide language which is used everywhere with very different version, accent, words, structures, and so on. Anyway, trying to eliminate the largest number of language mistakes possible. Use a spelling corrector. Devote an entire rereading for spelling problems. Rereading by yourself. Advise, use the advice of the tutors, advisors, or submit copies also to other readers. Facilitate also after the readings. That's basic advices, basic suggestions. No. This is not the central point, but anyway, you know, it has to be taken into account. The fact now we work with our computers, and particularly with kind of international English, means that we eliminate more and more the punctuation. The punctuation is part of the language. It means we should find in your faces commas, semicolon, points, final points, question marks, 2 points, suspension points, brackets, quotation marks, and so on. These are part of a language. These are part, you know, of the final version for a thesis. So be careful to this one. I know, you know, it's more and more common to eliminate all these kind of details, but this is not the right way. I said a few words already on Appendix 2, abbreviation, what we call the glossary. Don't hesitate to have a glossary, even if you have a limited number of abbreviations. What you can also do, if you want to put it clear, it's to have this abbreviation list as glossary, Appendix 2. But the first time you use an abbreviation, use the fully complete form in the text. So you have a double presentation with final, with complete form that could be useful for the reader. So that's what I already said, you know, the tables, figures, you know, they should be identified by a number, by a title, you know, by the source, if it's coming not from your own collection of data, but from other research or other professional article. And be very careful, because very often we find your tables and figures with words which are not coherent with the core in the pages around. Try to check the coherence, validate the coherence there. You will have an illustration. We are talking the preceding slide on the tables, figures, but you could have graphs, diagrams, flowcharts, perhaps. I don't encourage you to have photographs, you know. This is not a review, this is a thesis. Yeah. But anyway, all the illustrations have to be presented the same way, number, title, and they have to be mentioned, incorporated into Appendix 1 with a number, with a title, and with a page. Some perhaps other, because we still have advices. One or two important points here. The first one is your table graphic and charts. When you have table graphic and charts in the core, which should be integrated in the sentences in the paragraph, either by comments or they should illustrate a paragraph. But you know, they are not to be there if they are not really connected with the sentences on the same page. If it is the case and you think it's useful, you have better to put it in an appendix. Try also to update all your references. Sometimes we find reference to a paper published in 1995. It was a good paper. But the same author, you know, has updated the paper in an article in 2017. It's better to use the article coming from 2017. Now, this is an example. Yeah. This is an example of reference presentation. A classical system. The last name, lock, the first initial for first name, 2003, year of publication. It's much better if you have also a month, title, project management, the publisher, and the publisher. Okay. So this is for the book. Now, second one is for an article by Professor Marketing here, Nathalie Prime, and Prime is last name, and Nathalie, the first letter of the first name, published in 2001. The title, okay, the name of the review, Expansion Management Review, in September 2001, and the pages 52, 66. So you have to be very careful, and you should check the elements you have you obtained on the reference, and you should really check several times that your presentation is correct. So this is a list of what the phases should contain. It's very similar to what I said, cover and first page. Cover, which is provided by the CVG, first page, acknowledgement, table of content, abstract, keywords. You can add also, I didn't say that, a gel classification, when you have a keywords, you can go on internet and ask for gel classification. And gel classification is a number with 4 digits. It means each word, you say, for example, I don't know, financial control. You go on internet and ask for gel classification. And the computer will answer with the number of 4 digits. So you mention under the abstract the keywords, generally 6 to 10. And for each of them, the gel classification. That means if someone working on a similar topic knows the gel classification of the article, books, reports published in this area, he will just type the number, and a list of references will be printed immediately on the screen. So do that, it will be better. So after that, there is a list of abbreviation, table figures like this. My recommendation is to put that after. It means to keep here at the beginning, cover, first page, acknowledgement, abstract, keyword, gel classification, and contents. And keep the tables, graph, figures in Appendix 1, list abbreviations, table 2, with a glossary. And then you have, of course, your appendixes in the core. Okay. For the table of content, a few very classical suggestion of presentation. In order that it is easy to read, but the structure appear very, very clearly. Work on the titles of the different chapters and different parts. They have to be homogeneous. Okay, they have to be easy to read. The order of a chapter should be easy to understand. Okay. So also suggestions in terms of use of bold capital letters, which could be useful. So this is an example of what you can have in terms of chapter. It will be very different according to the topic. But for example, recommendation, 7 to 10 pages. Okay. Case study presentations and findings, comparisons about 18 to 20. Literature review, 7 to 10 pages. Introduction, perhaps a bit too long, 5, 6 pages. Sometimes it's more free than 5 or 6. And conclusion very short, 1 to 2 pages. So this is an example. There is no rule. We just can give you, for example, a framework, and this is one of them, context. Here you have a very good suggestion or advice, which is that you should not repeat the courses. We are not looking for summaries of textbooks. You are supposed to know the textbook's content. You are supposed to have read them. We are working on professional and academic articles and reports of financial institutions. Okay. If you want to say that something is very good in Burke and DeMarzo, page 424, you just mention the reference. That's all. That's enough. But don't try to summarize in half a page written by Burke and DeMarzo. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows everyone is able to read this page in Burke and DeMarzo. So, in your literature review, of course, and also in another way, in your chapter on the context environment, you should measure, you should mention what has been done in the past and where we are going to. Somehow, some kind of evolution is needed. Perhaps it will not be the center. Perhaps it will be the center. On some topics, the evolution from 2015 to 2025 is very central in the analysis. In some of us, it just, kind of short summary of what has been done, what is can be weighted. And generally, it is more in chapter 1 than in chapter 2. You have to be very clear on the concept, method, schemes, tools you will apply, but this will be in the methodology of the introduction, of course. That's the main idea here. Very important on cases. When you use cases, you use a case, for example, on deal with mergers and acquisitions. And you are interested by the operation. But we don't need in the core the history of both firms, which were created, 50 years ago by families. This is not the topic. It could be useful for the reader in a way. But what I suggest, is that you introduce in the core only on the cases, on the firms, the information is needed for your analysis. And if you think that an historical analysis, analysis of structure of a firm, analysis of a product is useful for a reader, create an appendix on that. But don't, put it in the core. The core should be, with a straight, should be organized around a straight line, which is to deal with the research questions. Be careful to repetition. This is the second point here. And there's one point which is difficult to solve generally. It's when you make interviews, because we need at the same time to have a summary of each interview in appendix, generally appendix 3, And you, of course, you use material. You have to use the material in the core. So try to do that in order that the number of repetition is limited. Your proposals, recommendation, good practice, and so on should be based on your analysis of the results. It is the result of your work. It's not at that stage, a kind of summary of what you found in the during the your reading step, or even you wrote in your literature review. It is based on your own analysis. Try to be very selective in the recommendations. It should be, general advice as it is written here, the point two. This is not what is required. You need to underline specific points and specific recommendation, good practice, warnings. We just already said a word on conclusion and the limits of the research to be used and to be mentioned. Okay. Again, some elements of the formats. Okay. Numbering. Yeah, keep also the same format for the whole dissertation, for the whole thesis. It seems to be clear, but we find this problem often. And the last one here is on the correction. What is written by Professor Chan here is that when you think you have finished 90% of your work, in fact, it means 50%. So one of the main problems we find is that, of course, students are late and they have no time to reread, and they don't check at the end of the last necessary modification, even of the conclusion, the introduction, the title, the subtitle, and coherence, for example, of the references in the core and reference list, is not properly managed, problems of number and titles, homogeneity between the figures, the tables, the graphs in the core, and the appendix number 1. This is not solved, So that means you really need time to reread. Need time. So that means, if you have to bring to a school your final version on June the 1st, that means at least everything should be done 2 weeks before. And you have the last 2 weeks to reread, make corrections, improve the title, the subtitle, deal with homogeneity problem, and so on. You need time to do that. So design your operational schedule in order to take into account that kind of problems. This is what you really need. So now my recommendations, after presenting these slides, is that you start by the beginning, And to start by the beginning, it means that you choose something which can become a topic. It will not be immediately a topic. It will be more kind of large subject, which can include several topics. Because, you know, and this is an experience in different environments and different schools, universities, countries, and so on over time. Students generally, they think that they cannot write 60 pages, you know, on a topic. So they try to have a larger topic. But if we don't reduce with them the topic after a few weeks, they understand that it is really too large, and they will either present something which is very general and without interest, or they will not have sufficient time to deal with this with development of a topic. So you should get an idea, kind of subject in your mind, but after that you have to reduce this subject. Don't remember that it should be at the same time academic and professional. You have to cover the references. You have also at the end to bring recommendation, good practice, and warnings. And remember also that it could not be only a case study. It's not the case study of your firm or your bank. Your bank or your firm can be integrated into the analysis, but it will be one case among others. Remember also that Vietnam is a wonderful country, but it's not the only one in the world. And references, comparisons coming from abroad are welcome, are not only welcome, but necessary. If you want to better understand your topic and introduce in the country good practice coming from our experiences. So open the windows to different kind of literature, open the windows to different cases, to different countries, to different experiences. This is what I think you should do right now. Next time I will go further, coming back with another set of slides on all these problems. I will go into the whole presentation, but because I think that even it is far from now, it's June, you have to understand what we're waiting from you and to integrate also this dimension into the preparation of the written part. So that's what we will do next time, which will be next Tuesday, September 28th. And then your task will be to write, and we explain that next week, the first paper on your topic. You can do it in 2 steps. First, with presentation of a topic. And second, what I'm waiting for you before the beginning of November, which is a presentation of a topic, motivations and so on. Paragraph 1 of introduction, research question, paragraph 2, methodology, paragraph 3, reference list, and first draft at least of chapter 1 and chapter 2. So this is where we are going to. So what I hope is that, we are September 21st today. in about what, I think beginning of November, something by 5 of November, which is in about 6 weeks, we will get, that kind of draft. This is what I'm waiting from each of you. And when I will validate, this introduction reference list, chapter 1 and chapter 2, generally that means that the most difficult step is over. After that, you will know exactly where you go, what you require in terms of analysis, interview, data collection, and investment in time and in the writing. That means you will know exactly how to organize your schedule. So today we have been through basic elements and tried to introduce the goals, what we are waiting for, what will be the main steps, give you suggestions, use my slides and Professor Chan's slide for that. Next time we'll go in more details. We move also to the defense, visual presentation, and the preparation also of the questions and answer session with the jury. And after these 2 sessions, you have about 6 weeks to prepare your topic, introduction, reference list, read, and write the first draft, chapter 1 and chapter 2. What I can propose you is to make, after session 2, this writing in 2 steps. First, you write your title, subtitle, and the first paragraph of introduction. You send me that. I give you my comments and validate it if I think it's well structured and feasible. And after that, you are right. We have elements, and you will send me these elements 2 weeks before session 3, which means something like November the 2nd or November the 3rd. But anyway, we write all that and send an email to Tram and to Mrs. Twillin, in order that it is very clear and you remember all these constraints. So thank you very much for today. You get the slides. If you don't get the slide, ask Tram and Twillin. And if you have questions, I'm ready to answer to your question. Send me emails, this step is different from the other courses. This course is very different. It's not only a course, it's 4 session introduction, and after that it's an individual preparation. So you should be ready to discuss, to send me draft. In order we move as quickly as possible. Good night, and see you next Tuesday for the next session. It will be Tuesday, September 28th at 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. for me, it's 2 p.m. Okay, fine. Thank you very much and good night. No question?
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.